Hello, and welcome to chemistry. This is chapter 1, where we start to discover what chemistry is. Chemistry is working with all materials and their changes, and these changes, chemical changes and changes of state, involve energy. Everything that we touch, see, use are made of chemicals. When you first learn scientific methods, sometimes you will see a list and you go down it. That's not how it works when you're doing discoveries. So you're going to come up with a question, and then you're going to start with a hypothesis, and that is just some ideas, and then you're going to test it and gather that data. If that data supports it, you may have to refine or change it. So it's a very circular process. And over here on the left, we have Abu Ali al-Hassa, and he was Arabic from where modern-day Iran is, and he was one of the first people to use the term hypothesis, and also one of the first to use evidence from experimentation to support hypothesis. And he studied optics. One of his quotes was, "Truth is sought for its own sake, and those who are engaged upon the quest for anything for its own sake are not interested in other things. Finding the truth is difficult, and the road to it is rough." Over on the right-hand side, we have Galileo, and he was an Italian, and he advanced this scientific method. For modern day, maybe you're familiar with Mythbusters, and they use the scientific method as well. So I said hypothesis, and a hypothesis is a tentative interpretation or explanation. And we test our hypotheses or hypothesis using an experiment, and that is a procedure or a series of steps. And the results of this experiment can support it or show it to be mistaken in some way. Notice we never say prove. One experiment cannot prove a hypothesis. Sometimes you have to change your hypothesis or modify it, and then you have to test it again. So again, we're in this circular process. When you're doing your experiment, you're gathering information, and those are observations. And we use some instruments to help focus our observations. We have a microscope, a balance, and over here a temperature probe. And we can do quantitative, which is a number. It's a measurement in some way, and it has a unit. And that's very objective. And then we can use qualitative, where we describe, and that is subjective. But remember, quantitative, quant means number. And you're probably familiar with those two, but something that may be new to you is inference. And an inference is different from an observation. You use the observation, but you also use your logic and your prior knowledge. And this is an assumption or part of a conclusion. So let's look at this picture, and I would like you to pause and write 3 observations and 2 inferences. Some observations that I came up with is this object appears to be on a leaf. It's red and green. It has white spots that look like hair. Looks like it has 2 antennas, and the legs have hair on them. So some inferences: this is a beetle, and the leg hair helps the beetle to grip. Another inference is the beetle is eating the leaf. And those all, you could have many others, all right? But notice that the observations are factual, and the inferences are where you draw some sort of conclusion. Let's try it again. Here's the picture, and I would like you to again write 3 observations and 2 inferences. So it looks like there are 5 what appear to be penguins, and we have some water, ice, and snow. Each penguin is black and white. Some inferences are the penguins are fleeing a predator that hunts in water. Another inference: more penguins are going to follow these 5 out of the water. So notice that observations are things that you can see, very objective, and inferences are conclusions. When you're setting up an experiment, you have variables. We have the independent variable, and that's the variable that we change. I remember it as I, independent, change the variable. Sometimes we say it is what's manipulated. The dependent variable is going to change as a result. Lots of times it's what we're measuring in the experiment. We also have controlled variables that are not tested, so those are kept the same. We also have something called a control group. We don't change anything. They don't receive the treatment. The independent variable isn't changed, and that way we can see specifically, we can compare the independent variable to the control group. If you test your hypothesis, you can come up with a theory. In chemistry, it's often called a model, and it explains how nature behaves. And then also we have law, for example, law of gravity. And law is a summary of observed behavior over time. So it is what is happening. Our theory or our model is explaining how it is happening. So as a beginning chemist, you're really going to have to be curious and imaginative and be committed to learning. I always post the chapter objectives, so use those to focus. You will be assigned videos, both ones that I make and others teachers, and you should annotate the notes. If it is another teacher, then you will see this little check mark, and that means that the concept that is in the notes is mentioned in the video. Be sure to do your homework, and you need to get into the habit of showing your work. Please ask questions. When you're working on your homework, spend a reasonable amount of time on a problem. Don't get into the cycle of working for an hour on a problem. That's not productive time. If you can't complete it, then come in and ask for help. And this is why it's important to work on your homework as we go through the chapter and not wait until the last night. We have chemistry every day, so make sure you do chemistry every day. Even 10 minutes is going to accumulate and help you out. Speaking of cumulative, chemistry is cumulative. Things we learned in the first, second, third, fourth chapter, we're still going to be using in May of next year. You will hear me say this all the time. It is important if you get stuck on something or if you take a test and you don't do well, it's important to go back and make sure you understand that material so you can use it in later chapters. And please know that you are capable of learning chemistry. I believe that you can do it. You just have to work hard and ask questions. One thing we're going to talk about is a growth mindset. We can get stuck in this I can't do it cycle, right? Or we can view a mistake as a natural process of learning and figure out a way to fix it and go on to something else. And this is a growth mindset, and that will serve you the best in both chemistry and your other classes. Thank you for listening, and I'm eager to see you in class.